Your name's not on the list, Mom. My son Avery blocked me at the entrance of my granddaughter's wedding in front of 200 people. My name is Amelia Rivers. I'm 72 years old, a widow. But they forgot one small detail. I was the one who paid for the entire event. Every single dollar of the $127,000 it cost. Let me take you back to where this nightmare really began. It was a Tuesday afternoon in March when they first came to see me about Sophie's wedding. I remember because Tuesdays were my volunteer days at the animal shelter, something I'd done every week since my husband David passed 7 years ago. But that morning, Avery called. Mom, can Taylor and I come by this afternoon? We need to talk to you about something important. My heart did what every mother's heart does when she hears those words. It jumped straight to the worst conclusions. Was someone sick? Were they having marriage trouble? In my 72 years, I'd learned that we need to talk rarely preceded good news. Of course, sweetheart, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'll make coffee. I canceled my shift at the shelter and spent the next 3 hours cleaning my apartment. Not that it needed it. I kept the penthouse spotless, just like David had liked it. But cleaning gave my hands something to do while my mind raced through possibilities. At exactly 2 o'clock, my doorbell rang. Avery stood there in his expensive suit, the charcoal Tom Ford I'd bought him last Christmas. At 45, he'd kept his father's strong jawline and dark hair, though gray was starting to thread through it. Behind him, Taylor wore a cream cashmere sweater that probably cost more than my monthly utilities. Mom, Avery kissed my cheek, that familiar woody cologne enveloping me for a moment. Mrs. Rivers. Taylor's smile was bright, perfectly white teeth against her tanned skin. She'd just come back from their vacation in Turks and Caicos, the 3rd one this year. Your home looks beautiful as always. I ushered them into the living room, the space David and I had decorated together over 40 years of marriage. The mahogany coffee table we'd found at an estate sale in Connecticut. The Persian rug we'd brought back from our anniversary trip to Istanbul. The Tiffany lamp that had been his mother's. Taylor's eyes lingered on each piece, and something flickered in her expression. Not appreciation calculation. Coffee's ready, I said. And I made those lemon bars you like, Avery. Mom, you didn't have to do that. But he took 3, I noticed. We sat them on the velvet couch David and I had reupholstered 5 years before he died me in my reading chair by the window overlooking Central Park. The March afternoon light filtered through the sheer curtains, making the room glow golden. For a moment nobody spoke. Avery glanced at Taylor. She nodded almost imperceptibly. So, I said, unable to bear the silence any longer. What did you want to talk about? Avery set down his coffee cup. It's about Sophie, Mom. My heart lightened. Sophie. How is she? I haven't seen her in goodness must be 3 weeks now. She's great, Taylor cut in, her voice warm. Finishing her last semester at Columbia Business School. Top of her class, actually. Pride swelled in my chest. My granddaughter. 25 years old and brilliant. I still remembered teaching her to bake cookies in this very kitchen, her tiny hands covered in flour. That's wonderful, I said, he said. I'm so proud of her. We are too, Avery said. He paused, and I saw something cross his face. Hesitation. Mom, Sophie's getting married. The world seemed to tilt sideways for a moment. Married, but she never told me she was seeing anyone seriously. It happened fast, Taylor explained, leaning forward. She met Marcus at an internship last summer. He proposed at Christmas. Remember when we all went to Aspen? It was so romantic, Mom Amelia. He proposed on the ski lift at sunset. Mom Amelia. She'd started calling me that 5 years ago, shortly after Sophie graduated high school. It had felt forced then. It still did. That's wonderful news, I managed. My hands trembled slightly as I set down my own cup. When's the wedding? September, Avery said. Saturday, September 14th. 6 months away. My granddaughter was getting married in 6 months, and I was just finding out now. We wanted to tell you in person, Taylor added quickly, as if reading my thoughts. Not over the phone. This is too important. Of course, I said. I understand. So how can I help? I assume you're here because you need help with planning. Another glance passed between them. This time I caught it clearly, some silent communication I wasn't privy to. Actually, Mom, Avery said, and his voice dropped to that soft tone he'd used since he was a little boy asking for something he knew was a stretch. That's exactly why we're here. You know how times are these days. The economy, inflation. Everything's so expensive. Taylor jumped in. "We just want Sophie to have her dream wedding. You know she's worked so hard. She deserves a beautiful day." I looked at my son, truly looked at him. The crow's feet around his eyes that hadn't been there 5 years ago. The slight slump in his shoulders. He worked at a small advertising agency in Midtown, good job, but not great. Taylor didn't work at all, called herself a lifestyle influencer, which as far as I could tell meant posting photos of brunch and giving advice about handbags to her 17,000 Instagram followers. "How much does Sophie's dream wedding cost?" I heard myself ask. Avery reached into his briefcase and pulled out a brochure. The cover showed a sprawling estate with white columns and manicured gardens. "Green Valley Estate," he said. "It's in Westchester, about an hour north of the city." I took the brochure. The venue looked like something from a movie grand ballroom with crystal chandeliers, outdoor terraces overlooking a lake, manicured gardens with stone pathways. Inside there were more photos tables set with fine china and gold-rimmed glasses, floral arrangements that looked like waterfalls of white roses and peonies. "It's beautiful," I admitted. "There's a full service package," Taylor said, pulling out her phone. "We've been working with their wedding coordinator. The venue includes the ceremony space cocktail hour on the terrace reception and the grand ballroom tables and chairs, linens, and basic lighting. That's $35,000. I tried not to react. $35,000. For one day. "Then there's catering," she continued, scrolling through her notes. "They have this amazing package with past hors d'oeuvres, plated dinner. We're thinking filet mignon and lobster tail, open bar, champagne toast, wedding cake. For 200 guests, that's $28,000. I did the math quickly in my head. $63,000 already. "Sophie found the most incredible dress," Taylor went on, her voice animated now. "Vera Wang. It's like something a princess would wear. It's $12,000, but Mom Amelia, you should see her in it. She looks like an angel. $12,000. For a dress she'd wear once. The flowers, we want white roses and peonies everywhere with some greenery. The florist quoted $15,000 for the ceremony arrangements. Reception centerpieces, bouquets, boutonnieres, everything. Photography and videography package is $8,000. The band Sophie wants live music, not a DJ, is $7,000 for 5 hours. My head was spinning. I'd lost track of the total. There's also invitations, programs, favors, transportation, hair, and makeup for the bridal party. Taylor trailed off. It adds up quickly. "How much?" I asked quietly. "Total." Avery cleared his throat. "With everything we're looking at, about $127,000. The number hung in the air between us. $127,000. I thought of David. When we got married in 1973, we'd had a simple ceremony at City Hall and a dinner at his parents' house. My dress cost $45 from a department store. We'd been happy with that. We'd been happy, period. But times were different now, and this was my granddaughter. My only granddaughter. My Clara, I'd called her Clara for years when she was little, after my own mother. The girl I'd raised half the time when Avery and Taylor were finding themselves in their 30s, taking long vacations and pursuing their passions. I looked at the brochure again, at the fairy tale venue, at the promise of a perfect day. "All right," I heard myself say. "I'll help." The relief that flooded both their faces was palpable. "Oh, Mom," Avery said, standing up to hug me. "Thank you. Thank you so much. Sophie's going to be thrilled." "You're the best mom, Amelia," Taylor said, and for a moment her smile seemed genuine. "I'll need to see all the contracts before I sign anything." I said, the business side of me kicking in, "And I want to meet with the vendors myself." "Of course," Avery agreed quickly. "We'll send you everything. You can review it all." They stayed another 30 minutes showing me pictures of the venue, talking about Sophie's ideas for the ceremony. Taylor pulled up her Pinterest board on her phone, dozens of images of weddings that looked like they cost more than some people's houses. When they finally left, I stood at my window and watched them exit my building 16 floors below. They climbed into their Mercedes, the one I'd co-signed the loan for 3 years ago, and drove away. I walked to David's office. We'd kept it exactly as he'd left it, his desk, his leather chair, the photos of our life together on the walls. I sat in his chair and spoke to his picture like I'd done countless times since he died. "David," I whispered, "our baby girl is getting married. I wish you were here to walk her down the aisle. I wish you could see the woman she's become." His photo didn't answer, of course, but in my mind I heard his voice. "Give her the wedding she deserves, Amelia. We worked hard so our family could have beautiful things. He was right. We had worked hard. Rivers Logistics had started with a single delivery truck in 1976. By the time David's heart attack took him in 2018, we had a fleet of 50 trucks and contracts with major corporations across the Northeast. I'd kept the company running for another 5 years after he died until I finally sold it to a larger corporation for a sum that ensured I'd never have to worry about money again. Avery knew I'd sold the company. He didn't know how much I'd gotten for it. That first meeting was just the beginning. Over the next 6 months, my life revolved around Sophie's wedding. Not that I saw much of Sophie herself. She was always busy with finals, then her summer internship, then thesis preparation. But Avery and Taylor came by my apartment twice a week, regular as clockwork. They'd sit on my velvet couch, drink the coffee I made, eat the cookies I baked, and we'd go over vendor contracts. I signed for the venue. $35,000 from my savings account. I signed for the catering. $28,000. I signed for Sophie's dress. $12,000. When I asked if I could come with her to the fitting, Taylor explained that Sophie had already been, and they'd wanted to keep it as a mother-daughter moment, just the two of them. I signed for the flowers. $15,000. I signed for the photography. $8,000. I signed for the band. $7,000. Each time I wrote my name on the contract Amelia Rivers, my bank account number, my credit card for the deposits. "You're so organized, Mom," Avery would say. "So good at handling all this paperwork." Well, I'd reply, "I did run a company for 10 years. "That's right," Taylor would laugh. "We forget you were such a businesswoman. This must be easy for you compared to all those contracts with trucking companies and warehouses." But they never mentioned that my name was on everything. That legally I wasn't just paying for the wedding, I was hosting it. There were other signs I should have noticed, like the time in June when I suggested meeting with the wedding planner together. "Oh, Mrs. Rivers, that's sweet, but you'd be bored to tears," Taylor had said. "It's just going over table arrangements and timeline details. Super tedious stuff." Or when I asked about my role in the ceremony. "What should I wear? Where will I be sitting? Do I get to say a few words?" "We're still figuring out all those details," Avery had replied vaguely. "Don't worry, Mom. You'll know everything in plenty of time." Or the most painful one when I asked about a grandmother-granddaughter lunch with Sophie. Just the two of us to talk about marriage and life and all the wisdom I wanted to pass down. "She's so swamped right now, Mom," Taylor had said, not meeting my eyes. "Between finishing school and planning the wedding and her new job starting in October, she barely has time to breathe. But she loves you so much. She talks about you all the time." But Sophie never called, never texted, never stopped by. I told myself it was normal. Young people were busy, and I was lucky to be included at all to be able to give my granddaughter this gift. In July, I got a call from the venue coordinator. "Mrs. Rivers, this is Jessica Martinez from Green Valley Estate. I'm calling about your event on September 14th. "Yes, Sophie's wedding. Is everything all right?" "Everything's fine. I just wanted to confirm a change to our records. Your son requested that we update the billing contact information to his name and email. I wanted to make sure that's accurate before I process it." My stomach dropped. He requested what? He said there might be some last-minute changes to the order, and it would be easier if the invoices came directly to him. "Is that not correct?" I kept my voice steady. "When did he make this request? Let me check." It was 2 weeks ago, July 19th. 2 weeks ago. They'd been at my apartment that very day showing me photos of the centerpieces, thanking me for being so generous. "Mrs. Rivers, should I make the change?" "No," I said firmly. "Please keep all billing information under my name. I'm the one managing the finances for this event." "Of course. I'll make a note in the file. Thank you for clarifying." I hung up and sat very still in my kitchen. The July sun streamed through the windows. From 16 floors below, I could hear the distant sounds of the city car horns, sirens, the rumble of traffic. They were trying to erase me from my own event. I opened my laptop. Yes, I had a laptop, despite what Taylor seemed to think about old people and technology, and checked my email. There were messages from vendors I didn't recognize. The photographer asking about timeline adjustments. The florist confirming a change in the bouquet design. The caterer asking about dietary restrictions. All of them addressed to Avery and Taylor. None to me. I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out the folder labeled Sophie's Wedding. Inside were all the contracts I'd signed, all the receipts, all the payment confirmations. Every single one bore my name, my signature, my account numbers. I called my lawyer. Martin Hayes had been David's best friend since college. They'd built Rivers Logistics together, David as the charismatic frontman, Martin handling the legal side. After David died, Martin had helped me navigate everything: the estate, the business sale, my investments. He was 70 now, semi-retired, but he still took my calls. "Amelia," he answered warmly. "Haven't heard from you in a while. How are you?" "I'm well, Martin. I hope I'm not interrupting anything." "Never for you. What can I do for you?" I explained about the wedding, the contracts, the vendor reaching out. Martin listened without interrupting, one of his best qualities. "And you've paid all of this yourself?" he asked when I finished. "Every penny. $127,000 from my personal savings and investment accounts. But the vendors are being redirected to communicate with Avery and Taylor." "It appears so." Martin was quiet for a moment. "Amelia, I need to ask you something, and I want you to really think about the answer. Do you trust your son?" The question should have been simple. He was my son, my only child. The boy I'd rocked to sleep, nursed through chickenpox, taught to ride a bike, put through college. But I thought about the distance that had grown between us over the years. The way his visits always seemed to coincide with when he needed something. The fact that he'd never once asked how I was doing, how I was coping with being a widow, if I was lonely in this big apartment. "I don't know," I whispered. "Here's what I want you to do," Martin said gently. "Send me copies of all those contracts. Every single one. I'm going to review them and make sure everything is in order, just to be safe. Martin, I don't want to cause trouble. Sophie's wedding is in 2 months. I don't want to ruin it over some miscommunication." "Amelia." His voice was firm now. "I've known you for 45 years. You're one of the smartest women I've ever met. You ran a multi-million-dollar company. If your gut is telling you something's wrong, listen to it." I sent him the files that night. 3 days later, he called me back. "Amelia, we need to meet. In person. Tomorrow, if possible." "What did you find?" "Not over the phone. Can you come to my office at 10? I didn't sleep that night. Martin's office was in Midtown in one of those old buildings with marble lobbies and brass elevators. I'd been there dozens of times over the years, but never with the feeling of dread I had that morning. His secretary showed me into his private office. Martin stood when I entered, and I was struck by how old he looked. When had he gotten so old? When had I... "Amelia." He kissed my cheek and guided me to the leather armchair across from his desk. "Coffee, please." He poured from a carafe, added cream the way I liked it, he remembered, after all these years. We sat in silence while I took the first sip, the ritual giving us both a moment to prepare. "Tell me," I said finally. Martin opened a folder on his desk. "I reviewed every contract you sent me. Venue catering, flowers, photography band, dress, invitations, transportation, hair and makeup. Everything. And your name is on all of them. You're listed as the client, the payer, the point of contact. Legally speaking, you're not just paying for this wedding, Amelia. You're hosting it." "I know that. I signed the contracts. But do you understand what that means if anything goes wrong, if a vendor doesn't show up, if there's damage to the venue, if someone gets hurt? You're liable. Not Avery. Not Taylor. You." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. I didn't think about that. Most people don't. That's why event insurance exists. He pulled out another document. "Did you purchase event insurance? No one mentioned it." "I didn't think so." He leaned back in his chair, studying me over his reading glasses. "Amelia, there's something else. I did some research into Green Valley Estate. Do you know how much their venue rental typically costs? $35,000. That's what I paid. For prime season September, their standard rate is $25,000. The number didn't register at first. "I'm sorry, what, $25,000? You paid $10,000 over their normal rate. But yet the contract says the contract is legitimate, but it's for their premium package, which includes services you didn't need and probably won't even notice. Extra servers, upgraded linens, a coordinator fee that's typically waived. Things that were added to inflate the price." My hands started to shake. I set down my coffee cup before I spilled it. "It gets worse," Martin said quietly. "The catering quote you received is also inflated. I called the company directly, said I was planning my daughter's wedding for the same date, same venue, same guest count. They quoted me $23,000, not $28,000. $5,000. They'd overcharged me $5,000. The flowers $15,000, that's actually reasonable for that quantity and quality. The photography seems fair. The dress? He trailed off, and I saw something in his expression that made my chest tight. What about the dress? Amelia, I called the bridal boutique. Vera Wang dresses at that shop range from $8,000 to $15,000, with the average being around $10,000. They wouldn't tell me specifics about Sophie's dress without authorization, but they did confirm that a dress purchased in March of this year for a September wedding was in that range. So the $12,000 is accurate, probably. But here's the thing. Martin pulled out a printed email. I also looked into Taylor's business registration records. She registered an LLC last November, Sophie's Dream Events. The name hit me like a physical blow. Sophie's Dream Events. What kind of business? I managed to ask. Event planning and coordination. Wedding planning specifically. According to the business plan she filed, she was looking to establish credibility in a portfolio of high-end events. Understanding washed over me like ice water. The wedding, Martin confirmed. Amelia, I think they've been using Sophie's wedding as a proof of concept. The inflated prices having their names as contacts with vendors. The photo documentation Taylor's been posting on Instagram, they're building a business on your dime. I stood up and walked to the window. 43 floors below, people rushed along the sidewalk, living their lives unaware that mine was crumbling. How much? I asked, my voice hollow. How much did I overpay? At minimum $15,000. Possibly more, depending on what else I haven't uncovered yet. $15,000. On top of the $127,000 I'd already spent. But Amelia, that's not what concerns me most. I turned to face him. What could be worse than that? 2 weeks ago, Avery sent emails to every vendor requesting they remove you from their communications and direct all future correspondence to him and Taylor. Not just billing questions, everything. Timeline changes, final payments. He's systematically cutting you out of an event you're paying for. Why would he do that? Martin's expression was pained. I can think of 2 reasons. Either they're planning more changes they don't want you to know about, which would cost you more money, or they don't want you there. The words hung in the air between us. That's ridiculous, I said, but my voice wavered. It's my granddaughter's wedding. Of course they want me there. When was the last time Sophie called you? I tried to remember. She's been so busy. When was the last time you saw her in person? Easter, I whispered. We had Easter brunch here. She came with Avery and Taylor. It was July. 4 months since I'd seen my granddaughter. Have you been invited to any pre-wedding events, bridal showers, bachelorette party, dress fittings? Taylor said they wanted those to be intimate, just close friends, and I stopped. And family. I wasn't considered family. I sat down hard in the chair. My legs wouldn't hold me anymore. What do I do, Martin? That depends. What do you want to do? I want to go to my granddaughter's wedding. I want to see her get married. I want to be there for one of the most important days of her life. Then we make sure that happens. I'm going to draft a letter to send to Avery Taylor and all the vendors. It will clearly state that you are the financial sponsor and legal host of this event, that all communications must include you, and that no changes can be made without your written approval. Won't that make them angry? Probably. But Amelia, they're already doing whatever they want with your money. What do you have to lose? I thought about that. What did I have to lose? My son's affection, which seemed conditional on my checkbook anyway. My granddaughter's love, which had been conspicuously absent for months. My dignity, which I was already losing by allowing myself to be used. Send the letter, I said. Martin nodded and made a note. There's one more thing I think you should do. What's that? I think you should move your assets into a protected trust. Not all of them, you'll still need accessible funds for living expenses. But the bulk of your wealth from the business sale, your investment portfolio, your properties, put them somewhere Avery can't touch them. Martin, you're scaring me. Do you really think he would try to? I think your son is under a lot of financial pressure. I think his wife has expensive tastes and big ambitions. And I think people do desperate things when they're desperate. He leaned forward. I've been doing this for 50 years, Amelia. I've seen families tear themselves apart over money. I don't want that to happen to you. I nodded slowly. All right, whatever you think is best. Good. I'll have the trust documents ready by next week. In the meantime, I'm going to send that letter this afternoon. Are you prepared for the fallout? I thought about Avery's anger, Taylor's accusations, the possibility of them cutting me out completely. But then I thought about David, about the life we'd built together, about the values we'd tried to instill in our son, about the woman I used to be, the one who negotiated with unions and faced down corporate executives and built an empire from a single truck. When had I become so afraid of my own child? Send it, I said again, stronger this time. Martin smiled. There's the Amelia I remember. The letter went out on a Friday afternoon. By Saturday morning, my phone was ringing. I let it ring. Watched Avery's name flash on the screen over and over. 23 missed calls by noon. Then the text started. Mom, call me immediately. What the hell is this letter about Martin has no right to interfere in our family business? You're embarrassing yourself. Taylor is mortified. Mom, call me. I didn't call. Instead, I went to the animal shelter for my Saturday shift. I spent the morning walking dogs and cleaning kennels and trying not to think about the phone vibrating in my locker. When I got home that afternoon, there was a message from Sophie, my granddaughter. Finally, I sat on my couch and pressed play. Grandma? Her voice was strained. It's me. I don't know what's going on. Mom and Dad are really upset. They said you sent some kind of legal letter about the wedding, Grandma. I don't understand. I thought you were happy to help us. I thought you wanted to do this. If there's a problem, can't we just talk about it? Please call me back. I'm worried about you. She was worried about me. Not I miss you, not I love you, not I'm sorry I haven't called. She was worried because her parents were upset and that might threaten the money supply. I deleted the message. Sunday the doorbell rang at 8 in the morning. I checked the peephole. Avery and Taylor stood in the hallway, both looking like they hadn't slept. I opened the door but kept the chain lock on. Mom, we need to talk, Avery said immediately. I think Martin's letter said everything that needed to be said. That letter was insulting, Taylor snapped. Accusing us of trying to exclude you. We would never. Then why did you request that vendors stop communicating with me? Silence. That was a misunderstanding, Avery finally said. We were just trying to make things easier. You seemed overwhelmed with all the details. I ran a company with 50 employees and millions in revenue, Avery. I think I can handle a seating chart. This isn't about the wedding, Taylor said, her voice taking on a wheedling tone. This is about Martin poisoning you against us. He's been jealous of Avery since forever. He always wanted David to leave the company to him instead. I almost laughed. Martin has his own very successful law practice. He doesn't need Rivers Logistics. Then why is he trying to turn you against your own family? Avery demanded. He's not. He's protecting my interests, like my husband asked him to do. I saw something flicker across Avery's face. Anger. Real anger. Protecting your interests. Mom, we're planning Sophie's wedding, your granddaughter's wedding. We're not trying to steal from you. Then why did you overpay for the venue by $10,000? Why is the catering $5,000 more than it should be? Taylor's face went pale. Those are the prices we were quoted. By whom? Your own company. Sophie's Dream Events. The color drained from Avery's face now, too. How did you? Taylor started. I'm old, not stupid. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? It's not what you think, Avery said quickly. Taylor's business is just getting started. We thought if we could show investors that we could plan a high-end wedding, get good photos and testimonials, it would help us launch using my money. We were going to pay you back, Taylor insisted. Once the business takes off, every penny we saved. Saved. I stared at her. You overcharged me. You took my money and used it to fund your business without asking me. That's not saving. That's theft. How dare you? Taylor hissed. After everything we've done for you. All the time we spend coming here keeping you company, making sure you're not lonely. You come here twice a week to ask for money. That's not keeping me company. That's maintenance. Avery's jaw worked. Mom, you're upset. I understand. Maybe we should have been more transparent about the business. But don't take it out on Sophie. This is her wedding day. Don't ruin it because you're angry at us. I'm not trying to ruin anything. I just want to be included in an event I'm paying for. You are included, Taylor nearly shouted. You're paying for it, that's how you're included. The words hung in the air between us, honest and ugly. I looked at my son, really looked at him. Get out, I said quietly. Mom, get out of my home. I'll see you both at the wedding. I'll be there because my name is on every contract and I'm the legal host, but right now I want you to leave." They left. I closed the door and locked it. Then I walked to David's office and sat in his chair. I tried. I told his photo. I really tried. But David, I don't think they love me. I think they love what I can give them. For the first time since he died, I let myself cry. Really cry. And for the first time in months, I let myself get angry. The morning of September 14th arrived with the kind of perfect weather that seemed designed to mock me. Crisp autumn air, golden sunlight, not a cloud in the sky. The kind of day that belonged in wedding magazines. I'd been awake since 4 a.m. Sleep had been impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw variations of the same nightmare arriving at the venue to find the gates locked, my name crossed off some list, Avery's face cold and distant as he turned me away. But that was ridiculous. I was the one who paid for everything. My name was on every contract. Martin had made sure of that. Still, my hands shook as I made coffee in the pre-dawn darkness. The past 2 months since the confrontation with Avery and Taylor had been tense. They'd stopped coming to my apartment. All communication went through Martin, now short business-like emails about final payments and timeline confirmations. I'd sent the last check 2 weeks ago, the final payment to the venue, $20,000. Sophie hadn't called at all. I'd tried to reach her 3 times. Once she'd answered, her voice hurried and stressed. "Grandma, I can't talk right now. I'm in the middle of final seating arrangements. Can I call you back?" She never called back. The second time, voicemail. The third time, the call went straight to voicemail as if she'd declined it. I told myself it was wedding stress, that she was overwhelmed, that after today things would go back to normal. But I didn't really believe it. At 5:30, I turned on the lights in my bedroom and opened my closet. I'd bought 3 dresses for today, unable to decide which one was right. The pink silk that Sophie once said made me look like a rose. The navy blue that was elegant and understated. The champagne gold that David had always loved on me. I chose the pink. As I laid it out on the bed, I remembered the day Sophie had made that comment. She was 12 and we were at a mother-daughter tea at her school. I'd worn a pink dress then, too, and she'd grabbed my hand and said, "Grandma Amelia, you look so pretty, like a flower in a garden." I'd kept that dress for years until it finally wore out. This new one was similar silk with a modest neckline and 3/4 sleeves falling just below the knee. Appropriate for a 72-year-old grandmother. Elegant without trying to compete with the bride. I showered and took my time getting ready. Applied my makeup carefully, not too much, just enough to look polished. I'd gone to the salon yesterday for a blowout, and my silver hair fell in soft waves around my face. The pearl necklace had been my mother's. She'd worn it at her own daughter's wedding, my wedding to David. I fastened it around my neck, the weight of it familiar and comforting. "Give me strength, Mama," I whispered to her memory. I slipped on the pink dress. It fit perfectly. The silk felt cool and smooth against my skin. At 7:30, I called for a car service. I'd thought about driving myself, but my hands were shaking too badly. Better to let someone else navigate the roads to Westchester. The driver arrived at 8. His name was Marcus Young, maybe 30, with kind eyes and an easy smile. "Big day?" he asked as I settled into the back seat. "My granddaughter's wedding." "Congratulations, first wedding in the family." "First grandchild's wedding, yes." "Must be exciting." "You look beautiful, if you don't mind me saying." I smiled despite my nerves. "Thank you, Marcus." The drive took an hour. We headed north out of Manhattan, watching the city give way to suburbs, then to the rolling hills of Westchester. The GPS led us through increasingly scenic roads until we turned onto a private drive marked with a discreet sign, Green Valley Estate. My breath caught. The photos hadn't done it justice. The driveway wound through manicured grounds past ancient oak trees and gardens bursting with late summer flowers. The main house came into view, a white mansion with columns looking like something from Gone with the Wind. White chairs were already set up on the lawn, facing an arbor draped in fabric and covered in white roses. I could see people moving around, setting up. The ceremony wasn't until 2 o'clock, but clearly preparations were well underway. "Where should I drop you?" Marcus asked. "The main entrance, I suppose." He pulled up to the front of the house. A young woman in a black suit was standing there with a clipboard. The wedding coordinator, I assumed. "Mrs. Rivers," she approached as I stepped out of the car. "I'm Jessica Martinez, the venue coordinator. We spoke on the phone." Yes, of course. It's lovely to meet you in person. You as well. Everything is running smoothly. The florist just arrived and the band is setting up in the ballroom. Can I show you to the bridal suite? I believe Sophie is getting ready there. My heart lifted. I'd love that. Jessica led me inside. The interior was as gorgeous as the exterior: marble floors, crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. Staff members rushed past us carrying flower arrangements and supplies. We climbed a sweeping staircase to the second floor. Jessica knocked on a door at the end of the hall. "Sophie, your grandmother is here." The door opened and Taylor stood there. She was already dressed in an emerald green gown that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was swept up, makeup flawless. She looked like she was going to the Oscars, not her daughter's wedding. "Mrs. Rivers," she said, her voice flat. "You're early?" "I wanted to see Sophie before things got too hectic. Is she available?" Taylor glanced back into the room. I could hear voices' laughter. "She's with the hair and makeup team right now. It's a bit chaotic. Maybe come back in an hour." "I'll just say hello. It won't take long." I stepped forward, but Taylor moved to block the doorway. "Actually, we're running behind schedule. The photographer wants to start candid soon, and Sophie's not ready. Maybe it's better if you head to the ceremony site. I'll tell her you stopped by." Something in her tone made my stomach drop. "Taylor, I'd really like to see my granddaughter." "And you will, at the ceremony. There's just a lot happening right now and extra people in the room." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You understand." I didn't understand. I didn't understand at all. But before I could argue, Taylor stepped back and closed the door. I stood in the hallway staring at the closed door, Jessica shifting uncomfortably beside me. "I'm sure it's just pre-wedding nerves," Jessica said kindly. "Brides can get overwhelmed. Would you like me to show you the ceremony space?" What else could I say? "Yes, thank you." We walked back downstairs and out onto the grounds. The September air was perfect warm, but not hot, with a gentle breeze. White chairs were arranged in neat rows on either side of a white runner. The arbor at the front was spectacular, covered in roses and peonies, just as we'd planned. "Your seating is in the front row," Jessica said. "Family section, of course." She showed me to a chair in the first row, right side. A small card on the seat read "Reserved." Not reserved for Amelia Rivers, or mother of the groom, or grandmother of the bride. Just reserved. "This is lovely," I managed to say. "Can I get you anything, water, coffee?" "I'm fine, thank you." Jessica hesitated. "Mrs. Rivers, I just want to say I've been doing this job for 10 years and I've never worked with a more generous grandmother. What you've done for Sophie is extraordinary. I hope she knows how lucky she is." The kindness in her voice nearly broke me. "Thank you, Jessica. That means a great deal." She squeezed my shoulder and left me alone. I sat in the white chair and looked around. Workers were hanging lights in the trees, tiny white bulbs that would create a magical glow once the sun set. The garden stretched out in every direction, impeccably maintained. In the distance, I could see the reception tent being set up. $127,000. This was what it bought. This perfect, beautiful day. I just hoped I'd be allowed to enjoy it. By noon, guests started arriving. I recognized some of them cousins I hadn't seen in years, family friends, neighbors from when Avery was growing up. Many looked surprised to see me sitting alone. "Amelia," my cousin Margaret rushed over, enveloping me in a hug. "I almost didn't recognize you. You look wonderful." "Thank you, Margaret. It's good to see you." "I can't believe our little Sophie is getting married. Seems like yesterday she was in pigtails." Margaret sat in the chair next to me. "Are you excited?" "Very much so." "You must be so proud. Avery told me you paid for the whole thing. That's incredibly generous." I smiled tightly. Sophie deserves a beautiful day. Still, not many grandparents would do that. My kids will be lucky if I can afford to give them a toaster when they get married. She laughed. "Where is Sophie? Is she getting ready?" "Yes, upstairs." "You've seen her? How does she look?" I hesitated. "I haven't actually seen her yet. They're behind schedule with hair and makeup." Margaret's expression shifted slightly. "Oh, well, I'm sure you'll catch her before the ceremony starts. Want to walk around the gardens? I could use a stretch." We strolled through the grounds together, Margaret chattering about her own children and grandchildren. It was pleasant, distracting. But every few minutes I found myself looking back toward the house, hoping to see Sophie. By 1 o'clock, the chairs were filling up. 200 guests, just as we'd planned. I saw Avery's colleagues from his ad agency. Taylor's influencer friends all dressed like they were at Fashion Week. Sophie's college friends, young and beautiful and laughing. At 1:15, the string quartet started playing. Pre-ceremony music, soft and elegant. At 1:30, I saw Avery emerge from the house. He looked handsome in his tuxedo. David would have been proud. He was greeting guests, shaking hands, playing the role of proud father. When his eyes met mine across the lawn, he nodded. Nothing more, just a curt nod. I nodded back. At 1:45, the bridesmaids appeared. 6 young women in sage green dresses carrying smaller versions of Sophie's bouquet. They giggled and posed for photos by the arbor. At 1:55, the groomsmen took their places. Marcus, the groom I'd never met, stood under the arbor with the officiant. He was tall, dark-haired, nervous. He kept tugging at his bow tie. The quartet shifted into the processional music. Everyone stood. And then I saw her. Sophie stood at the end of the white runner, her arm through Avery's. The Vera Wang dress was everything Taylor had promised, layers of silk and lace, a cathedral train of veil that floated around her like a cloud. She looked like a princess, like a dream. My granddaughter. They started walking, slowly in time with the music. Every eye was on them. As they passed my row, Sophie's eyes scanned the crowd. They passed over me without stopping. No smile, no acknowledgement. Just a blank sweep of the audience as if I were no one. As if I weren't there at all. They reached the arbor. Avery kissed Sophie's cheek and handed her to Marcus. Then he turned to take his seat in the front row across the aisle from me, next to Taylor. The ceremony began. I barely heard it. The officiant spoke about love and commitment. Sophie and Marcus exchanged vows, their voices trembling with emotion. They exchanged rings. They kissed. Everyone applauded. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Marcus Bradley. More applause. Sophie and Marcus walked back down the aisle, beaming. The bridal party followed. Then the guests began to stand, filing out toward the cocktail hour on the terrace. I stood too numb. Margaret touched my arm. That was beautiful. Are you crying? Oh, Amelia, it's okay to cry at weddings. I touched my cheek. I was crying. I hadn't even realized. Happy tears, I lied. Come on, let's get some champagne. I hear the cocktail hour has passed hors d'oeuvres from that fancy French caterer. The one I'd paid $28,000 for. We moved with the crowd toward the terrace. Waiters in white jackets circulated with trays of champagne and delicate appetizers, smoked salmon on crostini beef tartare, miniature crab cakes. I took a glass of champagne and found a quiet corner. That's when I saw Avery and Taylor holding court near the bar. They were surrounded by guests, all congratulating them, admiring the venue, praising the ceremony. You've outdone yourselves, I heard someone say. This is the most beautiful wedding I've ever been to. Thank you, Taylor said graciously. We really wanted Sophie to have something special. We, as if they'd paid for it, as if they'd planned it. I turned away before I said something I'd regret. For the next hour, I circulated through the cocktail hour, making small talk with relatives I barely knew. Everyone complimented the venue, the food, the flowers. Several people asked if I'd seen the gift table apparently Sophie and Marcus had registered at Tiffany and Williams-Sonoma. Very tasteful choices, one aunt said, though I hope they're not expecting too much. Times are tough for everyone. Times were tough, except when spending someone else's money. At 3:30, a bell chimed. Jessica's voice came through the sound system. Ladies and gentlemen, please make your way to the reception tent for dinner. The tent was magnificent. White fabric draped from the ceiling with those same twinkling lights creating a canopy of stars. Round tables were covered in ivory linens, each centerpiece a towering arrangement of white roses and peonies. Gold-rimmed china crystal glasses, gold flatware. I found my name card. Table 12, near the back, between 2 couples I'd never met. I looked toward the front of the room. The head table sat on a raised platform, Sophie Marcus, the bridal party. At the table directly in front of it, Avery Taylor Marcus's parents, and what appeared to be other immediate family. Table 1, the family table. I was at table 12. I stood there staring at my place card as the reality settled over me like a heavy blanket. They'd put me in the back, with strangers. Excuse me, are you Mrs. Rivers? I turned. A young man stood there, maybe 30, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Yes? I'm Thomas Martinez, Jessica's husband. She asked me to check on you, make sure you found your seat okay. I found it. Is everything all right? You look a bit pale. I'm fine. Is there any mistake with the seating chart? I'm Sophie's grandmother, but I'm seated at table 12. Yes, I see that. Thomas pulled out his phone and checked something. Let me verify with the bride. One moment. He walked toward the head table. I watched him bend down to whisper to Sophie. She looked up, her eyes finding me across the room. For a moment our gazes locked, then she shook her head. Thomas walked back, his expression uncomfortable. Mrs. Rivers, I'm sorry. The bride confirmed the seating arrangements. She said table 12 is correct. Did she say why? No, ma'am, but I'm sure it's just weddings are complicated. Balancing family dynamics and all that. Family dynamics. Yes. The dynamics where the grandmother who paid for everything gets exiled to the back of the room. Thank you, Thomas. I sat at table 12. My table mates introduced themselves friends of Marcus's family from Connecticut. Nice people. We made polite conversation through the first course, then the second. The food was exquisite, just as the caterer had promised. I couldn't taste any of it. After dinner, the toasts began. Marcus's best man told embarrassing stories about college. One of the bridesmaids cried while talking about Sophie's kindness. Then Avery stood. I'm not much for public speaking, he began, and the audience laughed appreciatively. But I can't let this moment pass without saying a few words about my daughter. My daughter. As if Taylor had nothing to do with her. Sophie, from the moment you were born, you've been the light of my life. I remember holding you in the hospital, looking at your tiny face and thinking, how am I going to protect this perfect creature? He paused, emotional. You've grown into an incredible woman. Smart, beautiful kind. You've made me proud every single day. Applause. People were crying. And Marcus, welcome to our family. I see how happy you make my daughter, and that's all a father can ask for. Take care of her. Love her. Cherish her. More applause. To Sophie and Marcus, Avery raised his glass. To Sophie and Marcus, the room echoed. Not once did he mention me. Not once did he acknowledge the woman who'd made this day possible. I drank my champagne in one long swallow. The dancing started. Sophie and Marcus's first dance, then the father-daughter dance. Avery and Sophie swayed to My Girl, and I watched my son hold my granddaughter, both of them smiling, both of them happy. I'd never felt more alone in my life. At 7 o'clock, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood, grabbed my purse, and slipped out of the tent. No one noticed. I walked back toward the main house looking for Jessica. I found her near the entrance, coordinating with the catering staff. Jessica, I need to leave. Can you call me a car service? Mrs. Rivers, is everything all right? Are you feeling ill? I'm just tired. It's been a long day. Of course. Let me call a driver for you. She pulled out her phone. It'll be about 15 minutes. Would you like to wait inside? I'll wait outside, thank you. I walked down the front steps and stood in the circular driveway. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. From the tent, I could hear music and laughter. Leaving so soon? I turned. Taylor stood on the steps, her emerald dress glittering in the fading light. I'm tired. I bet you are. It's exhausting, isn't it? All this fuss. She descended the steps slowly like a predator approaching prey. Did you enjoy your table? I tried to seat you with pleasant people. Why wasn't I at the family table? The family table was full. Marcus has a large family. You could have made room. We could have, but we didn't. She smiled. You know why? I didn't answer. Because you're not family, Amelia. Not really. You're the woman who wrote checks. That's all you've ever been. The words should have hurt. Maybe they would later. But in that moment, I felt something else. Clarity. You're right, I said calmly. I wrote the checks. Every single one. Which means legally I'm not a guest at this wedding. I'm the host. Taylor's smile faltered slightly. And as the host, I continued, I have copies of every contract, every receipt, every email, including the ones where you and Avery inflated prices to fund your business, including the evidence of fraud. That's not you can't prove. I can. My lawyer already has. Martin Hayes. Perhaps you've heard of him, one of the best attorneys in New York. I stepped closer. Did you know that in New York State, theft by deception is a felony if the amount exceeds $3,000? You overcharged me by at least $15,000. Taylor's face had gone white. But don't worry, I said softly. I'm not going to call the police. I'm not going to ruin Sophie's wedding day. I'm going to go home and I'm going to think very carefully about what happens next. A black car pulled into the driveway. My ride. Enjoy the rest of the reception, Taylor. I hope the cake is worth $1,200. I'm sure it will photograph beautifully for your Instagram. I walked to the car and got in. Where to? The driver asked. I gave him my address. As we pulled away, I looked back one last time. Taylor stood alone on the steps watching me go, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt powerful. The ride home took an hour. I spent most of it staring out the window, watching Westchester give way to the city, the suburbs to the skyline, the manicured lawns to concrete and steel. By the time the car pulled up to my building, it was full dark. The doorman, Patrick, rushed to open my door. Mrs. Rivers, you're home early. Is everything all right? Everything's fine, Patrick. Just tired. Big day, I imagine. How was the wedding? Beautiful, I said, and my voice only cracked a little. I rode the elevator to the 16th floor, walked down the hall to my apartment, unlocked the door, and stepped inside. The silence was absolute. I stood in my entryway, still in my pink silk dress and my mother's pearls, and looked around at my home. The home I'd shared with David for 40 years. The home where I'd raised Avery. The home where Sophie had spent countless afternoons baking cookies and playing dress-up and being loved. I walked to David's office. His photo sat on the desk, smiling at me. Forever 58. Forever healthy. Forever the man who'd loved me unconditionally. I'm sorry, I whispered to him. I'm sorry I let it get this far. I'm sorry I didn't see what they were doing. I'm sorry I was so desperate to be needed that I let them use me. The photo didn't answer. I sat in his leather chair and pulled open the bottom drawer. Inside was the cream-colored folder labeled Sophie's Wedding. I opened it. Every contract, every receipt, every email exchange. Green Valley Estate Venue Rental $35,000. Contract signed by Amelia Rivers. Prestige Catering. Full service for 200 guests. $28,000. Contract signed by Amelia Rivers. Bella Bloom's Floral Arrangements. $15,000. Contract signed by Amelia Rivers. Moments in Time Photography. $8,000. Contract signed by Amelia Rivers. The list went on and on. My signature, my credit cards, my bank accounts. I pulled out another folder. This one was new, prepared by Martin just last week. Inside was his analysis. The real costs versus what I'd paid. The evidence of Taylor's business registration. The emails from Avery to vendors trying to redirect communications. And a draft letter. A demand letter. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Rivers, this letter serves as formal notice that Mrs. Amelia Rivers has retained legal counsel regarding financial irregularities in the planning and execution of the wedding of Sophie Rivers and Marcus Bradley. Specifically, Mrs. Rivers has evidence that costs for said event were deliberately inflated by approximately $15,000 and that these excess funds were diverted for personal business use without her knowledge or consent. Under New York Penal Law Section 155.05, this constitutes theft by deception. I stopped reading. Martin had wanted to send this letter weeks ago. I'd asked him to wait until after the wedding. I didn't want to ruin Sophie's day. But Sophie had made her choice. She'd seated me at table 12. She'd walked past me without acknowledgement. She'd chosen her parents over her grandmother. I picked up my phone and called Martin. He answered on the second ring. Amelia, how was the wedding? Send the letter. Silence. Are you sure? He asked quietly. I'm sure. First thing Monday morning. To Avery Taylor and every vendor they tried to defraud. All right, I'll do it. He paused. How are you feeling? How was I feeling? Hurt, betrayed, angry, foolish, but also something else. Something I hadn't felt in a long time. Free, I said. After I hung up, I stood and walked to my bedroom. I took off the pink dress and threw it on the floor. I removed my mother's pearls and set them gently on the dresser. I changed into comfortable clothes, yoga pants, and a soft sweater. Then I went to the kitchen and made myself a cup of tea. It was 9 o'clock on a Saturday night. The reception would still be going strong. They'd be cutting the cake soon, dancing to the band, celebrating. Let them celebrate. Tomorrow, reality would come calling. I took my tea to the living room and sat in my reading chair by the window. 16 floors below, the city glittered. Somewhere out there, my son and daughter-in-law were enjoying a party they'd built on my money and my heartbreak. But I wasn't thinking about them. I was thinking about David, about the life we'd built. about the woman I used to be. After David died, I'd been so lost, so desperate to hold on to my family to stay connected to Avery and Sophie. I'd let them take advantage because I was afraid of being alone. But I wasn't alone. I had Martin. I had Margaret. I had my volunteer work at the shelter. I had my home, my memories, my dignity. Or at least I could have my dignity back. I opened my laptop, the one Taylor thought I couldn't use, and logged into my bank account. The balance made me pause, as it always did. $7.3 million. The proceeds from selling Rivers Logistics invested wisely over the past 5 years. Avery thought I'd gotten maybe $1 million for the company. Maybe 2 at most. He had no idea. I navigated to my scheduled transfers. There it was, monthly allowance to Avery Rivers. $4,000, set to auto-transfer on the 1st of every month for the past 7 years. 84 months times $4,000. $336,000 I'd given my son over the years. Just to help out while the ad agency gets established, he'd said. Just until Taylor's business takes off. Just to make sure we can give Sophie a good life. Just. I clicked on the transfer, hovered my cursor over the cancel button. Then I clicked it. Transfer canceled. Next, I pulled up the auto-pay for their utilities. I'd set it up 3 years ago when they'd had a temporary cash flow problem. Electricity, gas, internet cable. $300 a month. Canceled. The premium family phone plan that included their lines. $300 a month. Canceled. Sophie's student loan payments. I'd been making them since she graduated. $800 a month. Just until she gets on her feet after grad school. Canceled. One by one, I went through every automatic payment that flowed from my accounts to their lives. When I was done, I sat back and looked at what I'd accomplished. $5,400 a month in support. Gone. It felt like shedding weight I'd been carrying for years. But I wasn't finished. I opened a new browser window and searched for Irrevocable Trust New York. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I worked. I made lists, reviewed documents, planned. By dawn on Sunday, I had a strategy. At 8 in the morning, I called Martin at home. I need you to move forward with the trust, I said without preamble. This week, as soon as possible. All right, how much are we talking about? Everything except $1 million in liquid assets. The rest, all $7.3 million, goes into the trust. Martin whistled softly. That's aggressive. That's necessary. I want it protected. Completely. So that even if they somehow got power of attorney, they couldn't touch it. They won't get power of attorney, Amelia. You're completely competent. I want a psychiatric evaluation anyway. This week. The most respected forensic psychiatrist you know. Full cognitive testing, mental status exam, everything. I want documentation that I'm of sound mind. You're expecting them to challenge you? I'm preparing for them to challenge me. There's a difference. Martin was quiet for a moment. What happened at the wedding, Amelia? I told him. All of it. The closed door at the bridal suite, the seat at table 12, Taylor's words on the steps. When I finished, he let out a long breath. Send the demand letter, he said. I'll draft it to be as aggressive as legally permissible, and I'll get you that psychiatric evaluation. My colleague, Dr. Elizabeth Morrison, is the best in the state. I'll call her this morning. Thank you, Martin. Amelia, I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you wanted. No, I agreed. But maybe it's what I needed. On Monday morning, the demand letter went out. I spent the day at my regular activities. Italian class at 10, I was learning Italian, had been for the past year. My teacher, Lorenzo, was a retired architect from Florence who'd immigrated to New York in the 70s. He was 70 charming and had started looking at me with an interest that both flattered and terrified me. Buongiorno, Amelia. He greeted me with his usual warm smile. Come stai? Bene, grazie. E tu? We spent an hour on conversational Italian. It was the 1 hour of the week where I didn't think about Avery or Taylor or Sophie. I just focused on conjugating verbs and rolling my R's and laughing at my mistakes. You're getting very good, Lorenzo said at the end of class. Soon you'll be ready for our trip to Italy. The class was planning a 2-week trip to Tuscany in the spring. I'd signed up on a whim, thinking it would be something to look forward to. Now it felt like a promise to myself. A future that had nothing to do with ungrateful children. I'm looking forward to it, I said. After class, I had lunch with Margaret at a small bistro near Columbus Circle. So, she said once we'd ordered, how are you really? And don't say fine. I saw your face at the wedding. I considered lying. Then I remembered that Margaret had warned me years ago about Avery's entitlement issues. I told her everything. Margaret listened without interrupting. When I finished, she reached across the table and took my hand. "Good for you," she said. I blinked. "What good for you?" "For standing up for yourself, for not accepting their treatment. Amelia, I've watched them take advantage of you for years. I've bitten my tongue because you seemed happy to help. But this," she shook her head, "this is abuse, financial abuse. I wouldn't call it, what would you call it? They inflated costs to steal from you. They excluded you from an event you paid for. They've been systematically isolating you from your own granddaughter while draining your accounts. If a stranger did that to an elderly person, we'd call it elder abuse. It doesn't stop being abuse just because they're family." Elderly person. "Was that what I was now? You're 72. Margaret continued reading my expression. "That's not old, Amelia. That's experienced. That's powerful. You have years ahead of you. Don't waste them on people who don't value you." "But Sophie made her choice. Maybe she'll regret it someday. Maybe she won't. But you can't sacrifice yourself waiting for her to come around." I thought about that, about the life I could have if I stopped waiting for my family to love me the way I loved them. "You're right," I said quietly. "Of course I'm right. Now what's your plan?" I smiled. "I'm going to protect my assets, get a psychiatric evaluation, and let my lawyer handle the rest." "That's my girl. And in the meantime, I'm going to live my life." On Tuesday, I had my psychiatric evaluation with Dr. Elizabeth Morrison. She was a small woman, maybe 60, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Her office was in a medical building on the Upper East Side, decorated with diplomas and certificates that covered an entire wall. "Mrs. Rivers," she greeted me, "Martin speaks very highly of you." "He speaks very highly of you as well." We sat in comfortable chairs across from each other. She had a legal pad and pen, but no computer. "I understand you're requesting a forensic evaluation to document your cognitive function and mental competency. Can you tell me why?" I explained the situation. She took notes, asked clarifying questions, never once looked shocked or judgmental. "I see," she said when I finished. "And you're concerned that your son may attempt to argue that you're not competent to manage your own affairs." "Yes." "Have you experienced any memory problems, confusion, difficulty with daily tasks?" "No." "Any diagnosis of dementia, Alzheimer's, or other cognitive impairment?" "No." "Do you manage your own finances?" "Yes. I balance my own checkbook, manage my investments, pay my bills. I recently canceled several automatic payments and set up a trust with my attorney." She smiled slightly. "That doesn't sound like someone with cognitive impairment, but let's do a full assessment to document it. I'm going to give you several tests. Some will seem silly, but bear with me. Ready?" For the next 2 hours, she put me through a battery of tests, memory exercises, cognitive puzzles, questions about current events, math problems, following multi-step instructions. It was exhausting, but also oddly satisfying. Each test I passed felt like proof that I was exactly who I knew myself to be: competent, capable, sharp. When we finished, Dr. Morrison reviewed her notes. "Mrs. Rivers, I'm going to be very clear with you. Your cognitive function is excellent, better than average for your age. Your memory is intact, your reasoning is sound, your judgment is appropriate. You show no signs whatsoever of diminished capacity." Relief washed through me. "You'll document that. I'll write a comprehensive report, 8 to 10 pages, with all the test results, my observations, and my professional opinion that you are fully competent to make your own decisions regarding your finances, medical care, and personal affairs." She set down her pen and looked at me directly. "I'll also note that you're a victim of financial exploitation by family members, which is unfortunately common among older adults." "I'm not a victim," I said automatically. "Yes, you are. That doesn't make you weak or foolish. It makes you human. People who love us are the ones who can hurt us most because we trust them. They exploited that trust." I felt tears prick my eyes. "I just wanted to be a good grandmother." "You were a good grandmother. You are a good grandmother. But being a good grandmother doesn't mean letting people steal from you." She leaned forward. "Mrs. Rivers, I see cases like yours more often than you'd think. Adult children who view their parents as ATMs, who isolate them, manipulate them, drain their resources. What you're doing, protecting yourself, setting boundaries, that's not mean. That's survival." "It feels mean." "I know. But ask yourself this: if a friend came to you and told you this story, what would you advise her to do? I thought about that. If Margaret had told me this story, if one of the women at the shelter where I volunteered had told me this story, I'd tell her to run, to protect herself, to choose herself. I'd tell her to do exactly what I'm doing, I admitted. Then trust yourself. You're making the right choice. The phone started ringing on Tuesday night. I'd expected it. The demand letter would have arrived that morning. They'd had all day to stew in it, to panic to formulate their response. I let every call go to voicemail. By Wednesday morning, I had 37 messages. I listened to them over coffee, taking notes on a legal pad. Message 1, Avery. Mom, call me. We need to talk about this ridiculous letter. Message 2, Taylor. Mrs. Rivers, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding. Message 3, Avery. Mom, this is serious. You can't accuse us of theft. We'll sue you for defamation. Message 4, Taylor. Please, can we just talk like adults? Message 5 through 10 variations on the same theme. Message 11, Sophie, Grandma. I don't understand what's happening. Why are my parents so upset? Why are you threatening them? I thought you loved us. That one hurt. Messages 12 through 37, increasingly desperate, increasingly angry. The last message, Avery again. Fine. You want to play it this way? We're coming over. Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock. You're going to talk to us. I deleted all the messages. Then I called Martin. They're coming to my apartment tomorrow at 9. I need you here. I'll be there at 8:30. Martin arrived at 8:30 on Thursday morning, carrying his briefcase and 2 cups of coffee from the cafe downstairs. Thought you might need this, he said, handing me one. You're a lifesaver. I'd been awake since 5 cleaning my apartment, even though it didn't need cleaning. Nervous energy had to go somewhere. I'd changed clothes 3 times before settling on gray slacks and a cream cashmere sweater. Professional but comfortable. Armor without looking like armor. How are you feeling? Martin asked, settling onto my couch. Honestly terrified. That's normal. You're about to set boundaries with people who've never respected them before. It's going to be uncomfortable. What if they're right? What if I'm being cruel? Martin set down his coffee and looked at me directly. Amelia, in the 45 years I've known you, I've never seen you be cruel. Firm, yes. Direct, absolutely. But cruel, never. What you're doing isn't cruelty. It's self-preservation. The doorbell rang at exactly 9 o'clock. I looked at Martin. He nodded. I opened the door. Avery, Taylor, and Sophie stood in the hallway. All 3 of them looked like they hadn't slept. Avery's eyes were bloodshot. Taylor's makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles. Sophie's face was blotchy from crying. Mom, Avery said. Come in. They filed past me into the living room. Sophie's eyes widened when she saw Martin. Why is he here? Taylor demanded. Mr. Hayes is my attorney, I said calmly. Given that you received a legal demand letter, it seemed appropriate to have legal counsel present. This is a family matter, Avery said. We don't need lawyers. You threatened to sue me for defamation, I replied. That made it a legal matter. Martin gestured to the chairs. Please sit down. Let's discuss this civilly. They sat Avery and Taylor on the couch, Sophie in the armchair by the window. I took my reading chair. Martin remained standing, leaning against David's bookshelf. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Avery cleared his throat. Mom, I think there's been a huge misunderstanding. Has there, this letter? He pulled it from his pocket, wrinkled from being handled. These accusations about inflating costs, about theft, that's not what happened. Then what did happen? Taylor jumped in. Mrs. Rivers, we were trying to help you. The vendors quoted us those prices. We didn't inflate anything. Martin pulled out his phone. I have written quotes from Green Valley Estate. Their standard September package is $25,000, not $35,000. Prestige Catering quoted me $23,000 for the same menu, not $28,000. Would you like to see the emails? Silence. We got different quotes, Taylor said weakly. Because you told them someone else was paying, Martin said. It's a common scam. Vendors inflate prices when they know the person signing the check isn't the person negotiating. You exploited that. We didn't mean to, Avery started. You registered a business, I interrupted. Sophie's Dream Events, last November, before you even told me about the wedding. Sophie's head snapped up. What? Your mother registered a wedding planning business. She used your wedding as a portfolio piece, inflated the costs, and planned to use my money to fund her startup. That's not true. Taylor stood up, her voice shrill. I would never. I have the business registration documents, Martin said. I have your pitch deck to investors where you specifically mention successfully executing a six-figure luxury wedding. I have bank records showing where the excess $15,000 went directly into Sophie's Dream Events business account. Taylor's face had gone from red to white. That money was... We were going to pay it back. When? I asked. Before or after you tried to have me removed from vendor communications? Before or after you seated me at table 12 at a wedding I paid for? Grandma. Sophie's voice was small. I looked at my granddaughter, really looked at her. She was 25 years old, about to start a high-powered job in finance. She wore a Burberry coat I'd never seen before. Probably a wedding gift. Sophie, when was the last time you called me before the wedding? She looked down. I've been so busy. Easter. 4 months before your wedding. And you didn't call me. I called you 3 times. You answered once and said you'd call back. You never did. I meant to. You meant to? But you didn't. Because I wasn't important until you needed something. That's not fair, Taylor said. Sophie loves you. Does she? I kept my eyes on Sophie. Tell me, sweetheart, did you choose to seat me at table 12 or did your parents do that? Sophie's silence was answer enough. You did, I said softly. You looked at that seating chart and put your grandmother, the woman who paid for your $12,000 dress, your $28,000 dinner, your entire wedding, at a table with strangers in the back of the room. There wasn't space at the family table, Sophie whispered. There was space. You chose to give it to Marcus's aunt and uncle instead. People you'd met twice. A tear rolled down Sophie's cheek. I'm sorry. Are you sorry because the money stopped? Avery stood up. That's enough. Mom, you're being deliberately cruel. Sophie is young. She made a mistake. But this, he gestured to Martin, going after us legally, cutting off our support, that's vindictive. Vindictive, I repeated. I gave you $4,000 a month for 7 years. That's $336,000, Avery. I paid your utilities, your phone bills, Sophie's student loans. I paid for a wedding that cost more than most people's houses. And when I asked for basic respect, when I asked to be included in an event I was funding, you shut me out. We didn't shut you out. You closed the door to the bridal suite in my face. You seated me in the back. You walked past me without acknowledgement. Your wife told me I'm not really family. My voice cracked, but I pushed through. So yes, I cut off your support. Because I'm done being an ATM that walks and talks. We're family, Taylor shouted. You don't abandon family. You abandoned me first. Martin stepped forward. I think we should focus on the legal issues. Mrs. Rivers is willing to forego pressing charges for theft by deception, which I should mention is a felony on several conditions. Avery's jaw clenched. Conditions. First, you repay the $15,000 you obtained through fraud. Payment plan is acceptable. We don't have $15,000, Taylor said. That's not Mrs. Rivers' problem. Second, you sign an agreement acknowledging that all property currently in Mrs. Rivers' name belongs solely to her. No claims of ownership, no expectations of inheritance. You're cutting us out of your will, Avery's voice rose. I'm your son. Third, Martin continued. You agree to have no contact with Mrs. Rivers unless she initiates it. No phone calls, no visits, no emails. You're isolating her, Taylor said. This is elder abuse. Martin actually laughed. Mrs. Rivers has more friends and social connections than most people half her age. She volunteers at an animal shelter twice a week. She takes Italian classes. She's planning a trip to Tuscany in the spring. She's not isolated. She's choosing not to spend time with people who exploit her. I don't accept these conditions, Avery said. Then I'll see you in court, Martin replied, where a jury will hear about how you defrauded your elderly mother out of thousands of dollars, isolated her from her own granddaughter's wedding, and attempted to manipulate her assets. I wonder how that will play in the media advertising executive scams widowed mother. I'm sure your employer would love that headline. Avery went pale. Or, Martin said, his voice softening slightly, you can accept the conditions, start making payments, and maybe in time you can rebuild a relationship based on honesty and respect instead of money. The room fell silent. Then Sophie spoke. I'll pay it. Everyone turned to look at her. What's he? Taylor said. I'll pay the $15,000. I start my new job in 2 weeks. I'll set up a payment plan, however long it takes. She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. Grandma, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. You're right. About everything. I was selfish and stupid and cruel. I let Mom and Dad convince me that you'd understand, that you wouldn't mind sitting in the back, that you were just happy to help. Sophie, Taylor started. No, Mom. Stop. Sophie stood up. Grandma paid for everything. She's been there my whole life. She babysat me when you and Dad went on vacation. She helped me with homework. She taught me to bake. She came to every school play and every graduation. And I repaid her by ignoring her for months and treating her like she didn't matter. She walked over to me and knelt down beside my chair. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for it anyway. Please, Grandma, please give me a chance to make this right. I looked down at my granddaughter, at her young face so much like Avery's, so much like David's, at the genuine remorse in her eyes. Sophie, I said gently, I love you. I will always love you. But love doesn't mean accepting bad treatment. I know. If you want to rebuild our relationship, it has to be on different terms. You can't come to me when you need money. You can't use me as a backup plan. You have to actually want me in your life. I do want you in my life. I swear I do. I took her hands. They were shaking. Then prove it. Not with money. With time. With phone calls. With showing up. I will. I promise. I looked past her to Avery and Taylor. What about you two? Avery's face was hard. I can't believe you're doing this. After everything we've been through. After I was there for you when Dad died. Were you? Because I remember being alone in this apartment for months. I remember you visiting twice in the first year. I remember you asking if I'd thought about selling the apartment because it's too big for one person, and you could buy something smaller and give me the difference. He flinched. I was drowning in grief, and you saw a real estate opportunity. That's not I was trying to help. No, Avery, you were trying to help yourself, and I let you because I was desperate not to lose you too. But I'm not desperate anymore. Fine, he stood up. Fine, you want to cut us off? Do it, but don't expect me to come crawling back. I don't expect anything from you anymore. That's the point. He stormed toward the door. Taylor hurried after him. Avery, wait. Taylor looked back at me, her expression calculating. Mrs. Rivers, there's something you should know. Something Avery didn't want to tell you. Taylor, don't, Avery said sharply. She deserves to know. Taylor pulled an envelope from her purse and thrust it at me. He's sick. Everything stopped. What? I heard myself say. Taylor, Avery's voice was anguished. She's cutting us off completely. She needs to know why we were so desperate. Taylor's eyes were wild. Open it. It's his medical records. With shaking hands, I opened the envelope. Mott, Sinai Hospital letterhead. Oncology Department. Patient Avery James Rivers, diagnosis stage 3. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma prognosis 18 to 24 months with treatment, 6 to 8 months without. The paper fluttered from my hands. When? I whispered. Avery's face had crumpled. 8 months ago, right before we started planning the wedding. 8 months. He'd known for 8 months. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want your pity. He was crying now, actually crying. I didn't want you to help us because you felt sorry for me. I wanted to leave Taylor and Sophie secure. I wanted one last beautiful memory before I started chemo. I wanted my daughter's wedding to be perfect. So you used my money to fund it. Yes? Yes, I used your money because I'm dying, Mom. I'm dying and I wanted to do something good before I go. The room was spinning. My son, my only child, dying. The business, I said numbly. Taylor's business. I was trying to set her up. Avery said, his voice broken. So she'd have income after I'm gone. So Sophie wouldn't have to worry about her mother. I know it was wrong. I know we should have asked, but I was running out of time and I panicked. I looked at Martin. His expression was pained. Is it real? I asked him. He nodded slowly. I had it verified yesterday when Taylor sent it to my office. It's real, Amelia. I'm sorry. My son was dying. My son had lied to me, used me, hurt me, and he was dying. I stood up and walked to the window. 16 floors below, people went about their lives. Traffic moved. The sun shone. The world kept turning even as mine fell apart. "Everyone out," I said quietly. "Mom," Avery started. "Out, all of you. I need to think." "Amelia," Martin began. "You too, Martin. Please, I need to be alone." They left. All of them. Sophie was still crying. Avery looked shattered. Even Taylor seemed subdued. When the door closed behind them, I sank onto the couch. My son was dying, and I had just cut him off. I sat on that couch for 3 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I just sat in the silence and tried to process what I'd learned. Avery had cancer. Stage 3 lymphoma. 18 months to 2 years, maybe less. My son was dying. But did that excuse what he'd done? I thought about David. About what he would say. I could almost hear his voice. "Amelia, love, what do you think? I think he's lying about some of it," I said aloud to the empty room. The business scheme started before his diagnosis. Taylor registered that LLC in November. He wasn't diagnosed until January. So some of it was greed and some was desperation. Can both be true, Tim. Both are true love. People are complicated. Even our son. I got up and went to David's office, pulled out the folder with all the medical records Martin had sent over. The diagnosis was dated January 15th, but the business registration was November 3rd. They'd been planning to use my money before he got sick. The cancer just made them more desperate, more willing to cross lines. I called Martin. "I need you to be honest with me," I said when he answered. "Is Avery really dying?" "Yes. The medical records are legitimate. I had our medical consultant review them. Stage 3 lymphoma aggressive type. With treatment, he could have longer than 18 months, maybe 5 years, but without treatment. Can he afford treatment? Not on his salary and savings. His insurance covers some, but the out-of-pocket costs for the recommended protocol are around $30,000 a year." I closed my eyes. "And if I cut him off completely, he can't afford it." "Amelia, you can't make his health condition your responsibility. He made choices that hurt you long before he got sick. But if I don't help him, he'll die sooner." Martin was quiet for a long moment. "Yes, probably. So what do I do?" "That's not a legal question. That's a moral one, and only you can answer it." I hung up and sat at David's desk. What was the right thing to do? Help him, and I'd be enabling the behavior. Showing him that he could lie and steal and hurt me, and I'd still bail him out. Don't help him, and I'd be, letting my son die out of pride. I thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago, the one who would have immediately said yes, paid for everything, sacrificed whatever was needed. But I also thought about the woman I'd become, the one who'd learned to value herself, to set boundaries, to refuse to be used. Could I be both? I picked up my phone and called Dr. Morrison. "Mrs. Rivers," she answered warmly. "How are you? I need advice, as a therapist, not just a forensic evaluator." "Of course. What's going on?" I told her everything. The confrontation, the cancer diagnosis, my dilemma. When I finished, she let out a long breath. "That's incredibly difficult. I'm sorry you're facing this. What should I do?" "I can't tell you what to do, but I can help you think through it. First question, if Avery didn't have cancer, what would you do?" "I'd maintain the boundaries, require the repayment, limit contact until they demonstrated real change." "Okay, second question, does his cancer diagnosis change what he did to you?" "No. He still lied, stole, humiliated me." Third question, if you help him with medical costs, will you resent him for it?" I thought about that. "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." "Then let's think about this differently. What kind of help could you offer that you wouldn't resent, that wouldn't compromise your boundaries?" I sat with that question for a while. "I could pay for his medical treatment," I said slowly. "Just the treatment. Not the other expenses, not the lifestyle support, just the cancer care. How would that feel? Like I'm being his mother, not his ATM. There's a difference. There is, a significant one. And I'd still require the repayment plan for the money they stole. I'd still maintain the no-contact boundary unless they demonstrate real change. The medical support would be separate. That sounds like a boundary with compassion. Is that even possible? Amelia, boundaries aren't about punishment. They're about protection. You can protect yourself and still show mercy, The two aren't mutually exclusive. After I hung up with Dr. Morrison, I sat for another hour thinking. Then I called Martin back. "Here's what I want to do," I said. I asked Martin to arrange another meeting for the following day, Friday morning, 10 o'clock. Same place. This time I prepared. I wrote out my terms longhand on a legal pad so I wouldn't forget anything in the emotion of the moment. When they arrived again, all three of them, I didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Sit down," I said. "I have something to say and I need you to listen without interrupting." They sat. Avery looked wary. Taylor looked calculating. Sophie looked hopeful. I looked at my list. "Avery, I'm sorry you're sick. I'm sorry you're dying. I'm sorry you felt you couldn't tell me." His eyes filled with tears. "But being sick doesn't excuse what you did. It explains it. It doesn't justify it." The tears spilled over. "Here's what I'm willing to do. I will pay for your medical treatment. All of it. Whatever your insurance doesn't cover, I'll cover. Chemo, radiation, medications, hospital stays. Everything you need to fight this disease." "Mom," his voice broke. I held up my hand. "I'm not finished. I will pay for your medical care because you're my son, and I won't let you die from lack of funds. But that's all I'm paying for." Taylor opened her mouth. I cut her off with a look. "The $4,000 monthly allowance is gone. The utility payments are gone. The phone plan, the student loans, all of it. You'll have to cover those yourselves." "We can't," Taylor started. "Then you'll have to make different choices. Cheaper apartment, different lifestyle. That's not my problem." Taylor's face flushed red, but she stayed quiet. "Second, you will repay the $15,000 you obtained through fraud. Sophie has offered to take on this debt. I'm going to accept her offer, but with conditions." I looked at my granddaughter. "Sophie, I'm setting up a trust fund for you. $50,000 a year for life." Her eyes widened. "But there are conditions. You must be financially independent. You must have a job, maintain it, live within your means. You cannot live with your parents. The money from the trust is supplemental, not primary. If you meet these conditions, you'll receive the $50,000 annually. If you don't, the money goes to charity." I accept," Sophie whispered. "You'll use the first year's payment to repay the $15,000 immediately. The rest you can save, invest, use for rent, whatever you choose. But you have to prove you can stand on your own first." "I will. I promise." "Third," I continued looking at Avery and Taylor, "you will sign legal documents acknowledging that all property in my name belongs solely to me. The apartment where you live, my apartment that I've allowed you to use rent-free for 10 years, you have 90 days to move out." "90 days?" Taylor shrieked. "Where are we supposed to go?" "That's not my concern. You're adults. You'll figure it out." I kept my voice level. "The beach house in Montauk also mine. The locks have been changed. If you attempt to enter, I'll press charges for trespassing." "This is insane," Taylor said. "You're throwing your sick son out on the street." "I'm reclaiming my property. There's a difference." "What about after?" Avery asked quietly. "After I'm gone." "Will you help Taylor then?" I looked at my daughter-in-law, at the woman who'd told me I wasn't really family. "That depends entirely on Taylor. If she rebuilds a relationship with me based on respect and honesty, I'll consider it. If she continues to view me as an ATM, then no." Taylor's jaw worked, but she didn't argue. "Fourth and finally, I said you agree to have no contact with me unless I initiate it. No phone calls, no drop-by visits, no emails. If there's a medical emergency with Avery, Martin will be notified, and I'll decide whether and how to respond." "You're cutting us off," Avery said. "I'm protecting myself. There's a difference." I set down my list and looked at my son. "Avery, I love you. I will always love you. But I don't trust you. You've lied to me, stolen from me, and allowed your wife to humiliate me. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse. I never meant to hurt you, but you did. And until you can demonstrate not just promise, but actually demonstrate that you've changed, I need distance." "How long?" "I don't know. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year, maybe longer. But I won't be manipulated by guilt or obligation anymore." Martin stepped forward with a folder. "These are the legal documents. Medical power of attorney for Avery's treatment requiring Mrs. Rivers' approval for major decisions, property acknowledgement forms, trust documents for Sophie, and a no-contact agreement." He set them on the coffee table. "You have 24 hours to review and sign. If you don't sign, Mrs. Rivers will proceed with legal action for the fraud, and you'll get nothing." Avery stared at the papers like they were a snake. "I know this seems harsh," I said softly, "but Avery, you taught me this. You taught me that love without boundaries is just enabling. You taught me that by taking advantage of my love over and over until there was nothing left." I stood up. "I'm giving you a chance to fight your cancer without financial worry. I'm giving Sophie a path to independence and security. I'm giving Taylor 90 days to find a new place. Those aren't the actions of a cruel person. Those are the actions of someone who finally learned to value herself." I walked to the door and opened it. 24 hours. Martin will be in touch." They left in silence. Sophie was the first to reach out. She came back 2 hours later alone. I saw her through the peephole and almost didn't open the door, but something in the way she stood there, shoulders slumped, face blotchy from crying, made me relent. "Grandma," she said when I opened the door, "can we talk just us?" I let her in. We sat in the living room, the same seats we'd occupied that morning, but the energy was different now, quieter, sadder. "I signed the papers," Sophie said. "All of them. Martin has them." That was fast. "Because you're right, about everything." She twisted her hands in her lap. "I've been thinking about what you said, about showing up, about actually wanting you in my life, not just your money. And I realized I can't remember the last time I asked you about your life. Like actually asked. How you're doing what you're interested in if you're happy." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I can tell you every detail of my wedding planning, but I can't tell you what you do on Tuesdays or who your friends are or what makes you smile." "I volunteer at the animal shelter on Tuesdays," I said quietly. "I take Italian classes on Mondays. I have lunch with my cousin Margaret on Wednesdays. And what makes me smile is when people actually see me as a person, not a resource. I want to see you, the real you, not the grandmother who writes checks, but the woman who exists beyond that." I studied her. She looked so young, so genuinely remorseful. "Then let's start over," I said. "Slowly, coffee once a month. Phone calls that aren't about money or problems, just conversation." "I'd like that." She wiped her eyes. "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Do you hate my mom?" I thought about that. "No, I don't hate Taylor, but I don't trust her, and I don't particularly like her. She's made it very clear what she thinks of me. She's scared. I know that doesn't excuse it, but she's terrified of what happens when Dad dies. She's never worked. She doesn't have skills. Her whole identity is wrapped up in being married to an advertising executive and living a certain lifestyle. That's not my problem to solve. I know, but maybe if she sees that you're not the enemy, she'll change." "People don't change because we want them to, Sophie. They change because they want to." "I know, but I can hope, right?" I smiled despite myself. "Yes, you can hope." She stood to leave, then paused at the door. "Grandma, thank you for the trust fund, for giving me a chance, for not giving up on me completely. I could never give up on you completely. You're my Clara." Her face crumpled. "You haven't called me that in years. You haven't given me reason to." "I will. I promise I will." After she left, I sat alone in the quiet apartment. 1 down, 2 to go. The changes didn't happen overnight. Avery and Taylor signed the papers. Reluctantly, resentfully, but they signed. They moved out of my apartment on day 89 of their 90-day deadline. I went to see it after they'd cleared out. They'd left it in reasonable condition, no damage, no spite, just empty rooms that echoed. I sold it 3 weeks later for $2.4 million, $60,000 over asking. The money went into my charitable foundation, the Amelia and David Rivers Foundation, dedicated to animal welfare and supporting women escaping financial abuse. Avery started chemotherapy in October. I paid every bill without question, but I didn't visit. I received updates through Martin. The treatment was working. The tumors were shrinking. The prognosis had improved to possibly 5 years or more. I was glad. I was his mother. Of course I was glad. But I didn't call him. Sophie kept her promise. She started her job at Goldman Sachs, moved into a studio apartment in Brooklyn, and called me every Sunday afternoon. At first, the conversations were stilted, awkward, but slowly we found our rhythm. She told me about her work, her new friends, her struggles with living alone for the first time. I told her about my Italian classes, about the animal shelter, about my plans for the Tuscany trip. We met for coffee once a month, then twice a month. By Christmas, we were having dinner every other week. I watched my granddaughter grow up, finally. Watched her learn to budget, to cook, to handle disappointment and success on her own terms. She paid back the $15,000 in monthly installments. When she made the final payment in August, she cried. "I'm free," she said. "I'm finally free." How does it feel? Scary, but good. In September, on the 1-year anniversary of her wedding, she called me. "Grandma, I have something to tell you." My heart sank. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I'm getting divorced." I sat down. "What happened?" "The truth, Marcus married me because he thought I came from money. When he found out Dad and Mom were broke and you'd cut us off, he changed. He became mean, critical. He said he couldn't be expected to support a whole family of poor people." Her voice was matter of fact, but I could hear the pain underneath. I realized his love was conditional, just like Mom and Dad's love for you was conditional, based on bank balances and what I could provide. She paused. "You tried to warn me. At the apartment when you said I made my choice. You knew." I suspected. "I'm sorry I didn't listen." "You had to learn it yourself." "Yeah. Expensive lesson, though." She laughed, but it was bitter. $27,000 for a marriage that lasted 11 months. When you break it down, that's... "Don't," I interrupted gently. "Don't reduce your life to dollar signs. You're more than what things cost." "You sound like you learned that the hard way." I did. We were both quiet for a moment. "Grandma, can I come stay with you for a few weeks? Just until I find a new place. Marcus is keeping the apartment, and I need somewhere to..." "Come home, Clara. There's always room for you here." She moved into the guest room the next day, carrying 2 suitcases and a broken heart. And slowly, in that quiet apartment overlooking Central Park, my granddaughter and I became friends. Real friends. Not based on money or obligation, but on choice. As for Avery and Taylor, I didn't hear from them directly for 10 months. But I heard about them. Margaret kept me informed. They'd moved to a 1-bedroom apartment in Queens. Taylor had gotten a job at Macy's in the cosmetics department. Avery continued working at his ad agency, going to chemo on his lunch breaks. The lifestyle influencer Instagram account went quiet. No more posts about designer handbags or fancy brunches. In July, I received a letter, not an email, a handwritten letter delivered by regular mail. The return address said Avery Rivers. I almost threw it away without opening it, but curiosity won. "Dear Mom, I'm writing this after my 15th chemo session. The doctors say I'm responding well. The tumors are shrinking. I might have 5 years, maybe more. That's because of you. I know I don't deserve your help. I know I destroyed something that can't be fixed, but I need you to know that every day I wake up, I'm grateful. Not just for the money that's keeping me alive, but for the lesson. You taught me what I should have learned years ago, that love has to have boundaries. That giving has to come with respect, that you can't pour yourself out for people who only take. I became what I hated most, a user. I saw you as a resource, not a person. I let Taylor convince me that you'd understand, that you wouldn't mind that grandmothers are supposed to sacrifice. But sacrifice isn't the same as abuse. And what we did to you was abuse. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve to ask for it. But I want you to know that I see you now, the woman who ran a company, the woman who built a legacy, the woman who deserves respect. I'm trying to be a better man. I started therapy. I'm working on my marriage. I'm trying to understand why I thought it was okay to treat you the way I did. The answer, I think, is that I took you for granted. I thought you'd always be there, always forgive, always provide. I thought that's what mothers do. I was wrong. Mothers are people too. They have limits. They deserve dignity. I'm sorry it took losing you to learn that. I know you're building a new life. Margaret told me about the foundation, about your Italian classes, about your trip to Tuscany. I'm glad you're choosing yourself. I hope someday, years from now, we might have coffee. You can tell me about your life. I can listen, really listen, and just be your son again. Until then, I'll keep working on being someone worthy of that coffee. I love you, Mom. I'm sorry it took so long to show it the right way. Avery. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and put it in David's desk drawer. I didn't respond. Not because I was cruel, but because I wasn't ready. Maybe someday. Maybe not. but for the first time in years, I felt hope that my son might actually change. My 74th birthday fell on a Saturday in November. I'd planned a small dinner party at my apartment. Nothing fancy, just the people who mattered. Sophie helped me prepare. We spent the morning cooking together, something we'd never done when she was younger. "Grandma, you have to teach me how to make this lasagna," she said, watching me layer pasta and sauce. "It's amazing." It was David's favorite. His mother taught me how to make it 50 years ago. "Tell me about him. About when you were young." So I did. I told her about meeting David at a church dance in 1971. About our first date at a Chinese restaurant in Chinatown. About building Rivers Logistics from nothing, working 18-hour days, believing in each other when no one else did. "You were a badass," Sophie said, grinning. I was. "You still are." The doorbell rang at 6. My guests arrived all at once, planned I suspected. Margaret came first, carrying a bottle of Prosecco and a store-bought cake. "I know you said no gifts, but birthdays require cake. It's the law." Lorenzo arrived next, presenting me with a bouquet of sunflowers and a card written in Italian. "Tanti auguri bella Amelia," he said, kissing both my cheeks. Sophie raised her eyebrows at me. I ignored her. Martin came with his girlfriend, Judge Patricia Monroe. I'd met her at the Foundation Gala last month. Sharp, funny, exactly. Martin's type. Mrs. Chen from my building. Thomas and Jessica from Green Valley Estate, who'd become friends after the wedding debacle. 2 women from my volunteer work at the animal shelter. My apartment filled with laughter and conversation and warmth. We ate lasagna and salad and garlic bread. We drank Prosecco. We told stories. "To Amelia," Martin said, raising his glass, "who taught us all that it's never too late to reclaim your life." "To Grandma," Sophie added, her eyes shining, "who showed me what strength looks like." "To my favorite student," Lorenzo said with a wink, "who will soon speak Italian better than me." "To our friend," Margaret finished, "who inspires us all." I looked around the table at these people, my chosen family, and felt my throat tighten. "Thank you," I managed. "All of you, for seeing me, for choosing me, for reminding me who I am." After dinner, Sophie pulled me aside. "Grandma, I have something for you." She handed me an envelope. Inside was a check. $15,000. "Sophie, you already paid this back. This is different. This is from my savings, my own money that I earned." Her voice was fierce with pride. "I want you to use it for the foundation, for women who are going through what you went through." I pulled her into a hug, this granddaughter who'd grown into someone I was proud to know. "Thank you, Clara." As the party wound down and guests started leaving, Lorenzo lingered. "Amelia," he said softly, "walk with me, just to the elevator." We strolled down the hallway and he took my hand. "I have been wanting to ask you something for months now, but the timing never seemed right." My heart started beating faster. "I am going to Italy in April, to visit my family in Florence, and I would very much like you to come with me. Not with the class, just with me. Lorenzo, I know you are still healing. I know you have been hurt, but Amelia, life is short, and I very much enjoy your company." He smiled. "What do you say? Will you come to Italy with an old architect who thinks you are magnificent?" I thought about David, about the life we'd had, about whether I was ready for something new. Then I thought about the woman I'd become, the one who chose herself, the one who believed she deserved good things. "Yes," I said. "I'd love to." He kissed my hand, his eyes twinkling. Perfetto. That night, after everyone had gone and Sophie was asleep in the guest room, I stood at my window and looked out at the city. New York sparkled below me, alive and endless. I was 74 years old. I had a foundation that would outlive me. A granddaughter who'd learned to stand on her own. Friends who saw me for who I was. And maybe, just maybe, the beginning of a new chapter with someone who made me feel young. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mom, it's Avery. I know you said no contact, but I wanted to say happy birthday. I hope it was beautiful. You deserve beautiful things." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed a response. "Thank you. It was beautiful." I didn't say anything else. Didn't invite further conversation. Just acknowledged his kindness. It was a start. Maybe. I set down my phone and looked at David's photo on the bookshelf. "I did it," I told him. I chose myself. Are you proud? In my heart, I heard his answer. I've always been proud of you. Love, I'm just glad you finally see what I always saw. The Amelia and David Rivers Animal Sanctuary opened on a perfect October day. 5 acres in Westchester with a modern veterinary clinic, spacious kennels, training facilities, and adoption center. The main building had a mural of David painted on the side, David with a dog smiling that smile I'd fallen in love with 50 years ago. 200 people came to the ribbon cutting. Friends, donors, volunteers, local politicians. Sophie stood beside me holding one end of the ribbon. She was 27 now, confident and poised, engaged to a teacher she'd met at a volunteer event. A good man who loved her for who she was, not what she came from. Martin held the other end, tears in his eyes as he looked at what we'd built. David would have loved this, he said. I know. I cut the ribbon. Everyone applauded. In the crowd standing at the back, I saw Avery. He'd come alone. No Taylor, they'd separated 6 months ago, though not divorced yet. He looked thinner, older, but alive. The chemo had worked. He was in remission. Our eyes met across the crowd. He raised his hand in a small wave. I nodded back. We still didn't have coffee. Still didn't have the relationship he'd written about in his letter. But we had this acknowledgement. Civility. The possibility of something more someday. Maybe that was enough. After the ceremony, people toured the facility. I watched families meet dogs, watched children giggle as puppies licked their faces, watched older dogs, the ones who'd been abandoned, forgotten, get second chances. Mrs. Rivers, I turned. A woman stood there, maybe 40, with kind eyes and nervous hands. Yes, I'm Maria Santos. I read about your foundation in the Times, about how you established it after experiencing financial abuse from family members. Yes, I just wanted to thank you. My ex-husband controlled all our money. When I left, I had nothing. Your foundation gave me a grant. It paid for job training, helped with rent for 6 months. I have a job now, an apartment. My kids are safe. She started crying. Because of you, I got my life back. I hugged her, this stranger who wasn't a stranger at all. You got your life back because you were brave enough to leave, I said. I just helped with the bridge. Still, thank you. After she walked away, Sophie appeared at my elbow. That's the 4th person today who's thanked you, she said softly. The foundation has helped a lot of people. No, Grandma, you've helped a lot of people. By sharing your story. By turning your pain into purpose. I looked around at the sanctuary, at the people, at the life I'd built from the ashes of my humiliation. You know what the best part is? I said. I'm not doing this to prove anything to anyone. Not to Avery, not to Taylor, not even to myself. I'm doing it because it matters. Because I can. Because I choose to. Sophie smiled. That's how you know you've really healed, when you stop performing recovery and just live it. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. We stood together watching the sun set over the sanctuary, over this place of second chances. My phone rang. Lorenzo calling from Florence. Amore, he said when I answered. How did it go? Perfectly. I wish you could have been here. I will be there next month. Remember, I'm counting the days. We'd been together for a year and a half now. He still lived in his apartment, I in mine. But we spent weekends together, traveled together, built a life that worked for both of us. No pressure. No demands. Just companionship and respect and joy. I'm counting them too, I said. After we hung up, I took one last look at the sanctuary. Then I turned to Sophie. Come on, Clara, let's go home. Home to your place or home to mine? I smiled. Wherever we're together is home. I received one more letter from Avery. This one was different. Mom, I don't know if you read my letters. I don't know if you care. But I keep writing them because putting words on paper helps me understand what I did wrong. Taylor and I are divorcing. It's amicable, or as amicable as these things can be. We both finally admitted what we should have faced years ago. We built our marriage on money and status, not love. Without your support, we had to face who we really were. Turns out we didn't like it much. I'm in therapy 3 times a week now. I'm working on understanding why I felt entitled to your money. Why I couldn't see you as a person. Why I chose my wife's comfort over my mother's dignity. The therapist says I have a lot of work to do. She's right. But Mom, I want you to know I see the sanctuary. I see the foundation. I see the interviews you've given about financial abuse. I see the woman you've become, or maybe the woman you always were, and I was too selfish to notice. I'm proud of you. I know I have no right to be. I know I destroyed any claim to your pride in me, but I'm proud of you anyway. You took the worst thing I ever did to you and turned it into hope for hundreds of people. That's who you are. That's who you always were. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for reconciliation. I'm just asking that you know I see you now, and I'm sorry it took losing you to open my eyes. Your son Avery, I read the letter sitting at David's desk. Then I pulled out a piece of stationery and wrote back. Avery, I read all your letters. I haven't responded because I needed time to heal, to rebuild, to become someone whole again. I think I'm there now. I forgive you. Not because what you did was okay. It wasn't. But because carrying anger was becoming heavier than the freedom of letting go. I forgive you, but I don't forget. Our relationship will never be what it was. I can't go back to being the mother who gives without boundaries. But maybe we can build something new, something honest. If you want to have coffee, call me. Not Martin, me. We'll start small, 1 cup of coffee, 1 conversation, and we'll see where it goes. I'm proud of you too, for doing the work, for being honest, for trying to change. That's all any of us can do. Love, Mom. I mailed it the next morning. 3 days later, my phone rang. Avery's number. I let it ring twice, 3 times. Then I answered. Hello? Mom? His voice cracked. Thank you for the letter, for everything. You're welcome. Can we have that coffee whenever you're ready? I looked at my calendar, at the life I'd built full of purpose and people and joy. How about Saturday 2 o'clock, that cafe on Columbus and 72nd? I'll be there, Mom. Yes. I love you. I closed my eyes. I love you too, but Avery, yeah, love isn't enough anymore. It has to come with respect. I know. I'm working on it. Then I'll see you Saturday.